Hello and welcome to the Capital Conversation with me, Michael Hayman. Now, my guest today is the serial founder, angel investor, mentor and tech campaigner Jess Butcher. She's just launched Tick, a new platform to enable 1 million people to do 1 billion new things. But wait, here's a technologist whose message is life is about less screen time and getting us out more often. To tell us more, and welcome to the show, Jess Butcher. Tell us about Tick.
So we are a brand new micro video platform. So we launched just this month. It's only been 2 weeks. And it's all about a sort of hybrid of social media stories. So think Snapchat stories, Instagram stories, and almost sort of Wikipedia as far as an online bank is concerned of how-to information. And the idea is that we are empowering consumers to create really quick how-to content and that we can absorb that in less than a minute. So
Right.
Each answer is short fire, step-by-step, mobile optimized, under a minute.
So give us an example of what I could learn in a minute. What?
You can learn how to skateboard and ollie a skateboard, sorry. You can learn how to cook something. You can learn how to do some DIY. You could learn a dance move, how to present a TV show, exactly that.
So and where are you getting the content from? Do you have to originate it or do you just search for it?
It's UGC. So our ambition is to move this sort of social media content creation behaviour away from what we perceive to be slightly narcissistic, almost vacuous content. Look at me, look at my life, isn't it incredible? To look at what I'm passionate about, look at what I can do, look at what my skills are. So that same content creation, which is super simple, can be done on the go, is transformed into something that's a bit more altruistic and that lives on the open web so that everybody can find it and discover it.
But there's a huge market for this, for that narcissistic content that you've spoken about. I mean, is that the nut you're trying to crack? I mean, are you trying to move things on, or is this all about completely new audiences?
Yeah, we understand that everybody's looking for those dopamine hits, those little sort of likes and validations of other people thinking that they're awesome. I guess what we're trying to do is to take that same desire for dopamine, but repurpose it towards validation of what you're good at and what you know, so that it's expertise rather than you and your face and what you're looking at that's being liked.
So the dopamine, I mean, that's a fairly negative sort of framing of it, isn't it? I mean, is it like a drug, the sort of I mean, you've spoken a lot about it in terms of, I guess, the too much, too constant nature of just the bombardment of this information. I mean, what sort of state are we in, do you think, in terms of where it is at the moment?
I think there's 2 problems that Tick is looking to solve. The first is that there's too much content online, and it's long form, and the business models of the online platforms are designed to keep us online longer, send us down rabbit holes of further information, algorithms tempting you into the next piece, advertising, and a huge amount of ego within that content, particularly video content. You can't watch a video now and there not be a, hey guys, here's a little bit about me, before you then get the answer or the information that you were looking for when you went online. Okay. So that's the one challenge.
But two points in that, right? So there's one which is business, which is doing its best to keep you on its sites longer, and then I guess the kind of negative side of social media in terms of the look at me element. Exactly.
So too much content is the one challenge, and the other is the content creation by users within the social media channels. Now, the challenges there are that it's all about me. You didn't have that experience unless you've got a photograph of you doing that experience, which I actually think is changing how we process our memories in some way. Digital cameras, and if we didn't capture it, it didn't happen. And I walked around the Louvre with my goddaughter last summer, and I watched a whole art gallery with their backs to the art, taking selfies of themselves, rather than looking at the art with their eyes. Now that worries me, and I think what social media is doing with this constant onus on selfie is it's all about you, your image, what you look like, and your personal brand. And I just find that very concerning, because it means that you constantly have this focus on how do I feel about that? How does that make me feel? What about me? And that's not a very societal thing.
I mean, so obviously we go to a lovely gallery and we don't appreciate the art because it's all about the sort of the signposting that you were there, I was there. I mean, in terms of the actual cost to society of that, I mean, is this what's motivating you, is that we're losing the connection, the experience?
Yeah, there's a huge amount that concerns me. One is the lost hours, the amount of time that young people in particular are spending on social channels rather than in person with people. I think it's fundamentally changing the way in which people interact as well. And there's less depth, I think, of the in-person. All these kids sat at bus stops that you drive past, not actually talking to each other. This constant need to be stimulated all the time is worrying. And I also think that the mental health ramifications of FOMO, or the new one I've heard is FOBLO, fear of being left out, is what it's effectively done is given a loaded weapon to young people to exact passive aggression on each other from behind their bedroom doors.
Is that where the problem is with the very young, do you think, in terms of how the technology is being used?
It's addictive. It's addictive, and it's constantly about self, and I think growth and resilience comes from looking outside of yourself.
Do you ever think there's a contradiction in being one of the UK's best known technologists who's now got a message which is about less tech?
Yes, I do. A number of reasons for that. Firstly, I am an entrepreneur, and I believe tech has caused a lot of problems, but I also believe tech can be the solution. I think you can always build great solutions to societal problems that are enabled by technology. And I think the irony of building an online platform to drive offline behaviours is not missed on me, but I love that. And I think there's a real time opportunity when other people are suddenly shifting.
So the contradiction's the opportunities? Absolutely,
because I think whereas last year we had this last couple of years we've had people almost whimsically and in an amused fashion saying, "Oh, I'm addicted to my phone. Oh God, I can't. It's right next to me in the bed and can't turn it off." That's shifting away from bemusement to actual concern, I believe, and I think that tide is just starting to turn, where we think, "Well, what is this doing to us?"
But here's another tension. I mean, the ever sort of growing speed of technology, the need of tech to speed it up. Then there's this countermeasure that we need to slow it down a bit. I mean, does tech need to hear this call out? I mean, is it part of the solution? And it can't just be about people taking back control of their own lives in that way. I mean, surely the technologists, the Facebooks, the others need to play their part in actually sort of heeding the message about the potential issues.
Yeah, they do, but ultimately they can't overnight change business models that are all about time online and eyeballs. And I think that's one of the challenges. The business models are devised to keep people online for as long as they can. You don't monetize YouTube content unless you've got people captured for that amount of time. So therein lies the challenge with the big guys, certainly. And I'd love to build a model that was not about eyeballs, but was about sort of engagement or commerce or loyalty and things like that.
So we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of the internet. Most of that kind of founder generation will talk about the fact that it hasn't turned out the way they intended. Tim Berners-Lee, the inventors, talked about we must stop the web's downward plunge to a dysfunctional future. Is it all a bit too little too late, do you think?
I don't know. I think these things, I'm more of an optimist. I do think these things start to correct themselves. I do think that, and I also believe that a lot of these are inadvertent byproducts. I don't think they're intentional.
But just to push you on the fact that you made the point that business models are there to almost encourage the addiction. I mean, how do you break the habit if technology doesn't play its part?
Yeah, I think you break the habit through better awareness, better education, and models, hopefully like mine. I mean, we are not the solution, but I hope we're part of the solution that talks to young people and indeed adults who are starting to question their own behaviours about better ways of doing it. And we really start to try and empower and talk about the benefits of our offline lives. There's this whole new movement, for example, in the States around free-range parenting. Which is all about allowing your children to have independence. We live in this sort of coddled safetyism culture where, there's a big baddie around every door and a child has to be accompanied everywhere. They're not allowed to do anything for themselves and they have to be entertained at all times. Now, the whole point of that movement is teaching parents and indeed educators that it's okay for children to make mistakes, to have fights and you not have to intervene, for them to fall off the playground, and if they hurt themselves, that's how they learn. And I think, but they're using technology to drive awareness of those sorts of things.
Because a lot of people will say that Generation Alpha, this new generation of kids that are just going through school, that they've got a much better relationship with technology than older generations that are freaked out by it, stressed out by it, use it too much. I mean, is that where we're going to see the difference in terms of a new generation that is truly digitally enabled?
Yeah, I think we are. I think that there are more worrying byproducts for that young generation that's grown up with social media. And I think some of the things that I am most worried about are the social media trends and what those are doing to mental health and this sort of constant narcissistic, well, what about me reaction to everything. And also the echo chambers. I think that can be a very, very damaging thing. And the young people are growing up with that. But they are also voting with their eyeballs against certain platforms and what they perceive to be behaviours that they don't want to be involved in. So Facebook obviously famously suffering from that right now.
Right, so let's keep that activism because we're going to be back in part 2, and when we do come back, we're going to talk about going for growth in business and some of those big issues that Jess has been talking about in terms of social media and the future. Stay tuned. Welcome back. My guest today is TIC co-founder Jess Butcher. Now, Jess, before the break, we were speaking very much about your new venture, but you're also notable by being a highly vocal and successful female entrepreneur, and you've got views about women in tech. You've had a few big articles, big City AM piece. Tell us a little bit about your view about the issue as you see it right now.
Yeah, I know I'm a feminist, but I'm an old school feminist, which is that I believe in equality of opportunity. And I guess the longer that I've been involved in this women in tech and the minorities debate and increasingly being asked to sing from a song sheet of discrimination and that we are discriminated about and this is a hard time to be a woman in technology and in entrepreneurship, the more I started to think about whether that was actually my experience. And I had to conclude that it wasn't. And I've only ever found it to be an opportunity and an advantage, actually.
But does that, belie the fact that for a great many women in technology, it is a difficult thing to get the funding, to get the backing that you need to grow? I mean, are you the exception rather than the rule?
Oh, I know many fantastic female founders that are getting funded. There are fewer of us, and I would love to see many more embrace this sort of lifestyle because I think it's hugely rewarding, but it's also very, very high risk. And I don't believe that equality of opportunity will necessarily result in equality of outcome. I think that's the difference. And the thing that bothers me is this narrative of disadvantage might further exacerbate what I do know to be true, which is a female tendency towards more of a confidence gap, towards more of imposter syndrome and this less confidence to put oneself forward. And I fear that if women are constantly being told that it's stacked against them, then they're not going to act in a way that's assertive.
So when you express that as an opinion piece, there was quite a backlash to that piece. I mean, were you surprised?
I was surprised and disappointed because my intention isn't to deny the existence of discrimination because I know it does exist. I just don't think it's as all pervasive as the narrative would have us believe, and I don't think we're doing women any favours by not. What I was trying to do is just open the Overton window, I suppose, a little bit wider to say, well, actually, the gender pay gap is not about discrimination. It's a motherhood pay gap that is frequently by choice, not having been forced upon them. Something that I've witnessed a lot and why I tuned into this debate is the highest earning women I knew choosing to step back from those professions because they thought life's too short, priorities changed, they wanted different balance in their lives, and those choices were proactive, they weren't forced upon them.
But that's one side of the debate. I mean, a lot of things like the recent Rose report on female entrepreneurship will look at the fact that actually the deck is fundamentally stacked when you're meeting all male investment panels, when you're when you actually see that just the actual level of funding that goes to female-led businesses being so sort of poor compared to male-led. I mean, I know it sort of sounds funny. I'm the one making the case for more recognition of female entrepreneurs. Do you not see that as a problem? Do you?
Yes, I do. I'd love to see more women within the investment community. It's certainly a problem if you're trying to get funded on female targeted products. There's no question that I'll get my wife to look at this response. It's not good enough. You want to have more female investors in there to understand.
Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Not really. I've had people, for example, assume that a male colleague of mine was more senior in certain meetings, and to be honest, I'm more bemused by that than anything else. And it kind of makes me want to, stick my chin out a bit and go, "Come on, then, I'll show you." I say bring it on. And I do fear that, for example, I hear a lot of women saying they haven't been funded because they're women and that there was discrimination at play. And having now worked with a load of startups and seen a load of pitches, I want to say to them, no, actually, your pitch wasn't very good, your model isn't as strong as it needs to be, and that's a cop-out. We are all individuals, and I believe that very firmly, that our gender is the least important thing about us. It's down to ambition, articulation of dream and mission, and self-belief. And I feel that that is one of the things that women underperform on.
Right, so let's say you mentioned the word ambition. I mean, how ambitious do you think the UK tech scene is right now, when you look at it?
Very ambitious. I mean, I have a fairly privileged vantage point on that in the circles that I move. I get to meet with some of the coolest tech companies and entrepreneurs around London. So my view is a little bit warped that everyone I meet is, trying to go global very, very quickly, is being very successful in a huge amount of fundraising, and a huge number of women entrepreneurs that are doing incredibly well. So I feel very bullish about where we are.
Has it got the tools to keep going? I mean, has it got the capital, the talent? I mean, those are the two big ones. I mean, is there enough fuel in the tank to keep that kind of technology rocket on the up?
I think so. I think the speed with which companies scale has always been a challenge in the UK. I think the fundraising takes much longer, and talent is definitely harder to find. For a business like mine now with TIC, this is a consumer UGC platform. There's very little talent in the UK that scale businesses like that.
So for TIC to be a world beater on your own terms, give us a sense of what does mission accomplished mean?
Well, the first mission, there will be many missions. The first mission is to, as you said, empower 1 billion people with 1 million new skills. So once we hit that's
a good starting point.
Well, why not? We need lots of content, with lots of people sharing, and and we want to start. People have this sense of donating their skills to the rest of the world and their passions for others to learn from.
And how does a British technologist face Brexit?
I'm not worried. I would be worried if I thought there were going to be ramifications for talent in London.
Do you not see the debate
and
think, the sort of the chaos in Westminster? Does that not?
That
just goes on?
Personally, the whole thing terrifies me, and I find it hugely depressing listening to the news and seeing all the different developments and seeing the lack of leadership. I look as a businesswoman at the way that the negotiations have been handled, and I'm disgusted, because that is not how somebody in business would negotiate. None of that has happened. They have not played their hand well at all.
So when you say that's the government rather than Parliament, or both?
Well, I'm disgusted by both, but yeah, the government negotiations have been very bad, and the nature of the political debate around it and the political point scoring around it is also depressing.
But a lot of people will say, technology is one of the UK's jewel in the crown in terms of the industrial strategy, in terms of the future. Is that a lot of people are worried that actually this whole Brexit debate plays fast and loose with that sector's future because of the nature of investment going elsewhere, the nature of talent choosing to live elsewhere. I mean, is that a real problem, or is that just the froth of debate?
I don't think it's a real problem for technology. Technology is global by nature. Indeed, that's the problem. I was in a meeting this morning talking about the monopolies and how we look at those. And of course, you can't, because they are global in nature. And British technology companies have as much scope to be global in nature, and good ideas and good entrepreneurs will get investment, and they'll get international investment. I don't think Brexit. There are other industries, obviously, that I think have much greater implication from Brexit, but also opportunities. And I am opportunistic entrepreneur, and I believe that Brexit will present a huge number of opportunities to British companies and for cost savings for British buyers.
Okay, now I want to just move on, because I want to introduce Jess Butcher to Jess Simpson. Jess Simpson is the home version of Jess, what I've read is that they're very different people, that there's a metamorphosis that occurs on the train into London when you open your laptop. Tell us about both sides of that particular equation.
Yeah, I started thinking like this after my first maternity leave, and then that sense of these sort of two personality types that I have it expanded as with each of my next two children. I had 3 and 4 years. So Jess Simpson is the Hertfordshire mum of 3 that doesn't dress very well, isn't particularly articulate, and hangs around in the charity shops around Hitchin, a small market town. And then Jess Butcher dresses better, and sort of I can feel my business head and my drive and ambition coming in as I come into
What have you
London.
done for me lately? That kind of
Exactly.
thing. Yeah.
I realised I couldn't really use my married name professionally because, firstly, search engine optimization, I'd never come anywhere. There's already a Jessica Simpson.
Can you sing?
I can't, no, absolutely not. So I enjoy those dual personalities, though, because I feel that it gives me a real sense of balance around these different lives. And nobody could care less in Hitchin what I do. Occasionally, the streams cross and they'll see something like my MBE, for example, and it hit the local Comet. And they kind of look at me strangely and go, really? What is it you do again? Because they just think I work in tech.
But I've read a few articles about that home life. It sounds a very happy one in terms of where you as a person are happy. Has tech lost that ability to make us happy in the same way that our home life does, or your home life does?
Oh, that's a profound question. Yes, in some ways, I think that's exactly what I'm trying to achieve for my business. When I spend too long in London, I get stressed. I start talking to very A-type, successful, aspirational people, and there's this constant sense of needing to be mindful, needing to eat healthily, what's my mission, what's my purpose in life? And then I go back to Hitchin and my family, and I just think, it's not that important. We need balance. We need to transcend ourselves. Listen to good music. Get out. Listen to birdsong. Laugh. Be silly.
But there are a lot of intense tech founders in parts of London that are living it, working it, sleeping it. Everything is about the creation of that world-beating business. Can you have it both? Can you have it all?
I don't think you can do that effectively unless you spend some time out of that. And I see that as my superpower, the perspective of being able to step out of my business, become Jessica Simpson, if you will, for a while, and then look back at it and think, right, hang on, what is important? What about all those 10 things I'm doing is going to move the lever? Because 9 of them aren't. And on the train back into London, I'll remember the one that will.
Now, Jess, we've run out of time. I was going to ask you about Harry Potter, your favourite sort of creation you didn't actually create yourself, but we'll have to leave that for another time. But thank you so much for coming onto the show. A big thank you to Jess. And that's all we have time for. Thank you so much to my guest, Jess Butcher, and her optimistic take on tech. And it's been a story of the world beyond our phones, but one where we still might need a digital leg up to make the most of it. Or as one recent incumbent of the White House used to put it, the best is yet to come. And there'll be more from the best in business on the next Capital Conversation. I'll see you then.